All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Today, we're going to be looking at workflow efficiencies and the difference between implementing a workflow-driven approach as opposed to the traditional module approach. So if you've got any questions, please use the Q&A section in the webinar where you'll be able to access and ask questions, and then at the end we'll be able to go through those. So just a quick introduction on Virtusales, the difference between the workflows and modules and why we're talking about and why it becomes important. And to help people in thinking about this and their own roles and their own opportunities is, looking at acquisitions process and looking at the rights sales process and how having everything in a single ecosystem for a workflow will provide benefits for the publisher as opposed to implementing a standalone sort of module for each area. And then at the end, we will go through any questions and answers. So a bit about Virtusales and why we are talking to you today. We deal with many publishers, content providers, from children's publishers, educational publishers, reference publishers, university press publishers, and each of those have different workflows. But if they are looking at their workflows, the ultimate goal is how can you be able to produce an efficient workflow where people can have access to all of their information that they need to complete their work in a single place. So as we know, and we're going through, what's the difference between a workflow and a module, and why is it important? We hear the word workflow mentioned endlessly as we're discussing things about efficiencies and software, but what exactly is the difference between the two? Typically, modules, when we look at those, are things such as title management, production, rights, contracts, royalties, digital asset management, and inventory management, perhaps, finance. So these are typically module areas that software companies, through commercial reasons, and customers will actually purchase those particular areas. Now, what's the difference between them being divided into this manner and also being able to look at a workflow? If we look at one particular example, say for example, title management, every department needs something from that module, but it's only a small piece of their actual requirement. So we've got, say, production need to know the title, they need to know some basic specifications of the product. Marketing need to know what books they're going to be promoting. Licensing, perhaps looking at what are the third-party rights that they've acquired for this particular book. And digital departments need to know all about the assets that are associated to a particular title. And the same goes across rights, acquisitions, publicity. And you look at that, across every module area, every department needs to interact with. Now, the challenge of looking at implementation in this manner is where you end up perhaps paying for functionality that you're not using. So for example, you have digital asset management, and you're thinking about it just as a way that you can store your legacy files or your ebooks. But really what's happening is you have other departments who are managing assets and doing things that they actually need something, but it's not thought about in a traditional sense as a workflow. So people sort of try and put specific things in a specific module, but really everyone needs to have a layer of interaction with every piece of data that's sitting across the system. So, what typically happens is that leads to inefficiencies, and we have data that's spread across multiple systems, and people don't have access to everything that they need. And they also end up doing a lot of dual keying between systems. And the most obvious, I'm sure, that people see is, things like even contracts, where someone's entering in the title, they're doing the acquisition, and then someone says, oh, well, now it's time to enter in my contract into my contract system. So I'll start keying that data in there. Where, if that was a workflow, they wouldn't have to key that in. It would be part of a workflow. And so instead of having this scenario where you have single workflow spread across multiple systems, what we want to do is have a workflow in one ecosystem where they can actually go through whatever requirements are for each role to then manage that process without having to jump into so many different areas. So with Biblio, this year we're releasing our latest version of Biblio, and it's a suite of workflows. So remembering that a workflow, as opposed to a module, allows someone in each department to do many different tasks across many different areas of software. And generally for us, you'll have workflows where people will be acquiring titles. You'll have workflows where people are managing the production of assets and titles. You'll have the management of the metadata and distribution of those. And you'll have sales and publicity. You'll have rights and licensing. You'll have the processing of royalties. And you'll have things such as inventory management and digital asset management. Now, each of these will need information across each of these different departments. So instead of putting barriers up between each of these, we're looking at allowing everyone to access the information that they need to complete their particular role. So to best illustrate this, it's better to look at a specific example. So I've got two examples here today. And the first one is going to be looking at acquisitions. And it's to think about all the things that may be involved with acquisitions. And then we're also going to look at rights management. Now, this isn't meant to be every single piece in the acquisition, but all rights, but it's to highlight areas where people need to think differently about how they are looking to complete their work to make sure that they can be as efficient as possible. So if we look at acquisition now, it's a similar one to what we were looking at before where it was title, but acquisition needs to worry about the title. They need to worry about cost estimates. They need to worry about contacts, who's working on this, their biographies. They need to work with marketing about doing how the book is going to be promoted, doing cost estimates, recording the royalties, being able to have contact with the customers, being able to manage titles, assets, etc. So typically what we find is this is often outside of a system. This could be done in emails, Excel, it's on pieces of paper, and many publishers don't know about their actual acquisitions until it is acquired. And then it's, oh, this is the title list that we're doing for this particular season. We need to get the contracts done, or we've signed the contracts. So that's when it starts its life for other departments to become aware of what's happening in the business. Now, what we'd like you to do is to think about the options of changing the way that people are interacting. So in terms of, sorry, I'll just move that. Looking at this one, this is a dashboard. So what most publishers do is they will build a proposal that is done in Word, it's shared around, it's got, you know, what's the book about, who's its target audience, you know, who's the author, biography of the author, they'll have comments, they'll manage that process, they'll be saying who's going to work on it. So instead of that being in an offline document and not really visible to other areas, in Biblio, you could have an acquisition dashboard where you can build up detailed information about a potential project. You can also record assets and have quick access to those assets where you can click in to the manuscript directly to make decisions, to have it available for review, to have commenting in your meetings about whether you should approve or go forward, why you should go forward. And here, within that same sort of ecosystem, I showed you before, there was a manuscript access. But from within a click of a button, being able to go, this is what my book's about, then being able to say, I need the manuscript, being able to invite the author to upload the manuscript, to have automated reminders send out, but for that asset to belong directly against the project. So if someone needs something, they go to one particular place. For this example, transformative science education. So here you'll see there's actually access to all sorts of assets that could be associated to this particular project. And you can start to build up that as the life of that title is built up. But it starts generally with a manuscript or a proposal or something like that. So we've uploaded our manuscript, we've got a proposal, and now we want to do a P&L. So again, we're in the same ecosystem. We're still thinking about our acquisition process, but we've actually delved into the production module. So far, we've started with our acquisition or title management, if you want. We went to our digital asset management system and we uploaded some assets. And now we're in our production area, or traditional production area, I should say, where we're now looking at a P&L of how much money could this project make if we were to acquire it. And so this information, in this example, we're looking at the hardback, paperback, and an ebook, and we're looking at the sales. And obviously there's a lot of calculations that sit behind this. And what we want to really highlight today is that all these things that we're showing you today are being done by a publisher. Everyone does it. It's just that some do it in 5 systems, some do it in 10 systems, and some do it in 1 system. And it's how many publication P&Ls can you do? So if you look at analysis across 10 titles, or if it's so time consuming because you have to go into so many different areas that you only have time to do half that number, you know, what is a better option for your business? So you've done your proposal, you've done some asset gathering, we've done our P&L to look at the profitability for a project. Now, at that amount, 80%, we're now doing our contract. So we've only entered in the top layer of information once, but we're then moving to the next area. So we're building in our contracts area. Now, each publisher will have different workflows. Some will have where acquisitions will actually start the contract process. So we have templates that you enter in a contract. So the person who, and some acquisitions may not be doing that, and they might do a contract request form, which is also available, but they still are in the one place, and they will enter in the basics of the contract. You know, they'll have templates that says, these are the rights that we're going to acquire, serial rights, book club rights, whatever it may be. They can record, you know, advances that they're going to be doing. And they can record the royalty rules and formula. Now this is obviously all of this information is what goes in at the very start of the process. But it's where royalties down the line, when we got our sales coming back in, is going to need all this information that started at the beginning. So, the acquisitions, by being able to complete a workflow within a sort of single ecosystem, is able to provide information to all of the other departments down the line that are going to need this as we go through the life cycle. So the next step is, so we've now touched on contracts acquisition, we've done our production estimating, we've done our digital assets, we've recorded what rights we have available to sell, we've recorded the royalty rules and formulas that we'll be paying. We're now doing our pub planning. So we're saying, okay, what are the titles that we're going to be releasing over a particular period? What's the books about? Again, we're building this list up. So as you add information to the system, sales and publicity can start to run reports to say, what have we acquired? What have we got coming up? What can we work with? So that's an example of acquisitions, workflow. Now, if we are to look at rights and licensing, we'll have, in this example, we've got the rights team. We've got them interacting with assets and different versions of the assets. We've got them recording customer relationship management. Who are they? Who are the people that could potentially buy things? Production. Are they going to sell a right and tag it onto a printing that they want to then deliver? Are they going to be doing some marketing associated to it? So, hey, letting everyone know about their seasonal pub list, what they've got available, why people should buy it. Then we've got our finance for things like tracking the payments, invoices for any rights deals that they do. They've got title management. So we're back at the beginning again, where we need to know the titles and what they're actually going to be doing with that. Being able to share assets, being able to manage third-party rights that they've acquired. So, the rights team will need to know, what can we do with these assets? Is there any particular things in this book that would stop me selling a right or a permission sale, perhaps? So, back at the beginning of the process, we saw acquisitions entering the contract. Now, the rights department is now saying, well, what rights do I actually have available to promote and to sell? So by having everything in a sort of singular area, this department is now doubling back to the beginning of the process to say, these are all the things that I have available. By title, to say sub-rights available, territories, status. So this is, again, very interesting because a workflow can be interconnected, the rights department can know about things even before they're signed, so that they can start to think about their planning process and what they will be promoting and when they will be promoting. Now, the next part is they need to touch on sales and publicity. So things like being able to produce marketing guides for rights deals. Remembering that your book sales also need to do this, and they need to do it in their own way. But because the data is in a single area, anything that the rights and licensing need access to help in their marketing side, they have access to that area without having to rekey data in. So it allows them to be able to promote more titles more effectively and more efficiently. Now, they're also gone in here and they're promoting who's interested in actually purchasing sub-rights. So this is more of your CRM type implementation. So a rights person needs to say, I've promoted these titles, these people are interested in purchasing them, and these are the details of each of the potential deals. But you want to be able to manage all of that centrally. So all of the deals that Editions Jaloux are interested in, so that you can perhaps focus on them more in the future. So rights and licensing have looked at what contracts and rights they have available. They've looked at metadata to help in promoting the book so far. And now they're recording their opportunities for selling rights. Now, in the process of selling rights, they also need to track third-party rights. So in each particular book, each asset that's within that book, perhaps it's a jacket image, perhaps it's a graphic, perhaps it's a piece of content. Are there any limitations on those assets that would stop a subright deal? So perhaps there's a restriction on this one. It's got Europe and the Middle East. So any sale that is done on a subright, someone would need to know that actually this particular piece of text would need to be redacted so that a subright sale could be done. But if you don't have access to that information, then it becomes much more difficult in processing these deals. So instead of processing 10 deals, you can process 5 deals because the research component is so much slower. But this information, it started at the beginning in the original acquisition process, in the managing of the acquisition side of things. Any particular noise, I apologize. I do have a very large dog that likes to join my webinars when they can. So here we're looking at a department that's down the line, looking at what's available and what's restricting any potential sales. Now, the rights and licensing, you would enter in a deal. So this is where we're actually selling a particular subright. In this example, it's a German license, and we start to put in language, territories, the deal currency, all of that thing. Now, anyone who's involved in this particular area knows that this is where the complicated side of the rights and licensing starts. So you do a deal, you then need to track it, you need to record payments in multiple currencies, and you need to chase this deal down for the next 5 years or 6 years or however long that deal is open for. But after you've processed who you've sold it to, generally, what do you need to do? You need to share an asset. So we're actually now jumping into a different area, digital assets. So you've done a deal, you then, or a permission sale or whatever it may be, you then need to actually grab a particular file, and which is also, let's say you're sharing the latest print files or a particular file that they're going to do the translation from, that production are using, that other departments are accessing. So you're going through from that particular deal and being able to access an asset and to be sharing that. So if you can do that within a couple of clicks, as opposed to trying to find out or ring the production department or the digital asset department to say, hey, I need to share this file, I've done a deal, great news. You can have access to that and invite people and record the fact that that's being shared out. Now, after you've done your rights side of things, you've then got income coming into the system, which then needs to interact to your royalties department. So your royalties department is looking at a particular book. So this is for one, it's the same title, but what we're looking at is income that's come from various sales of formats of the book, the hardback, ebook, paperback, etc., advances that are paid. But we need our subrights income to automatically update this area as well. So this subrights income has automatically gone through to the royalties area, and that started all the way back at the acquisition side of things. So by being able to break down the barriers of traditional modules, people are able to complete their roles and workflows within a single ecosystem. So again, this is just highlighting all the different sort of areas for rights and licensing that's available and things that they have to do. And if you have to go into lots of different modules or areas to get that information, it becomes very challenging. So for you, what I'd like you to take out of this is really just thinking about the workflow and the benefit of being able to change the way that you've been doing things just because we started using Dropbox, or we've got our contract or our proposals done offline in Word. If that's not the best way for efficiency of your industry or your department, please look at how you can integrate things so that you can streamline things, because publishers are doing more than what they've had to do before, and it's getting tighter, it's getting harder. So if you can do more titles or more products with the same resources, that's going to help you in staying relevant and being able to be as efficient as possible. All of these things as well is about supporting people who are working remotely. If you have your IT department who are having to support 10 different systems, it becomes much more problematic when people are working remotely and having to access everything. So ultimately, we're looking to help you increase your productivity while having access to all the things that you need to complete your role. These are just a couple of examples, and every one has lots and lots of different opportunities and things like that. But if you think outside the box and you think about how you can really benefit from some of these, the value for your long-time processing is going to be unlimited. So we are at about time. I see that there is one question that we've got here is, can Biblio hold metadata like descriptions, keywords, back cover copy, etc., and can it push out into Onyx feeds? Yes, that's a great question. So Biblio, you're able to store every piece of information associated to a book from acquisitions. Perhaps the sales and marketing department an editorial will start to build up metadata, which will then go out in Onyx, which Biblio then sends out to all your distributors for you automatically, but you update it in one location, and they can send out the digital assets as well as part of that process as well. And the next question was, you can put in standard formulas and then adjust for exceptions later. Can the acquisitions area generate a contract? Yes, it can. So all of those contract clauses and royalty rules and formulas and rights you've acquired can be output into a contract that can be signed and then distributed to the author. And then that signed contract can be stored against the actual product. So again, when you come down later on to sell rights or get any piece of information, everything to do with the contract is at your fingertips. So I believe we've answered the main questions. Oh, we've got one more. Given how interconnected all the different parts of the workflow approach is, how do you prevent people from different departments causing problems for each other, failing to appreciate their actions in one area of workflow might have negative consequences for someone else in workflow? So different departments having access to all this information, it's a great question. And the way that that is managed is through securities. So you can have someone enter in some contractual information, but you can have it so that only someone else from a particular department could approve that information. So people can view information, they can edit information, or they can approve information. So that's something that helps in that area where you're worried about different departments who were siloed being able to do things that they weren't able to do before, access information they weren't able to before. So you can manage it through securities. In terms of royalties, can you generate royalty statements? Yes. So the end of the line is you will produce a royalty statement, you'll ingest sales that are then going to be run against the initial contract that we did at the beginning of the process. and that will produce a royalty statement, which can be then pushed out to a royalty portal for the author to log on and to view that information automatically. So I believe that's time. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I should have had my email up there, but it's rod@virtusales.com, or you can contact me on LinkedIn. But please feel free to ask if you come think of anything else, come back and talk with me. And I can help you out with costs or anything else that you may have questions on. So thank you again for attending, and I look forward to talking with you in the future.